It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio.
And online at SBNationLive.com.
Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
Hey, sports fans! Coach Nick here, as always, on every Tuesday evening, coming at you on SB Nation Radio. Either with the streaming side, or you can tune in on your FM radio wherever SB Nation exists in your market, hopefully. Glad to be here. The season is over, but the season is now begun. We now have the draft and free agency and summer league and everything else that we want to talk about and break down during the summer, like the LeBron James effect on the Lakers, right? That could be an interesting video we might have to get into, or certainly maybe we'll just be on LeBron Watch and then get ready to get the videos out and edit something cool to show you what it's going to look like when he goes to another team, because I think it's pretty clear he ain't going back to Cleveland. We have a great show for you today. A lot of all-star lineup. We have Alex Kennedy of HoopHype going to come on and talk about that LeBron free agency and some other things. We have my buddy and friend of the breakdown, Safa Kamalian, who's an assistant coach for the RGV Vipers. He's going to give us some insight into what it's like to be an assistant coach in the G League. Very exciting stuff. And then, of course, we have Dave DuFour, who comes on and breaks down everything else, like the finals. We're going to go through what happened there. I'm a little bit frustrated that LeBron James self-inflicted his own wound. We're going to talk more about that, maybe burn the house down a little bit in our third segment with Dave, because I just think it's a problem. I might have lost some respect for him, having taken himself out of the series to some degree. That said, it was pretty amazing what he was able to do anyway. But that finals was, there's a couple plays here or there that would have been the difference between the Cavs being up 2-1. And even still, winning that first game on the road changes the entire complexion of the finals. While you're at it, on the YouTube channel yesterday, we dropped a really amazing video where I retold the entire finals in the words of the players and the coaches. So I took all that pristine audio from the post-game, interviews and mixed it together with really great music and really great epic shots of what was going on that they're talking about. And it creates a really unique experience. I think that will be the future of how people are going to edit highlight tapes of these games. So I'm really excited about it. You should definitely go over to B-Ball Breakdown on YouTube and check that out and watch it a couple times. Why not? So I can't tell you enough how great this show is going to be as we move forward. So don't go anywhere. Don't change that dial. Stay tuned for a lot more coming up on the B-Ball Breakdown.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
All righty, sports fans, it's Coach Nick here, and we are in for a treat today. A lot of great guests and a lot of good segments and lots of interesting subjects we're going to talk about with the NBA. And today, on the first segment, I'm really excited to get something a little bit different. We're going to have my friend of the breakdown and the buddy of mine, Safa Kamalian, come on, who is an assistant coach for the RGV Vipers in the G League. Someone who, we don't often hear a voice of the coaching staffs from the G League, and I'm really excited to get some of his impressions and what it's like. So let's bring him on the show. Safa, thanks for coming on and joining us.
Hi, Coach Nick. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So listen, you've been a coach, you've been around the international scene for a long time, and you landed a job in Rio Grande, and I'm just kind of curious, was there anything that struck you right from the beginning that was completely different from any other coaching experience you had?
Well, yes, definitely it was different than whatever I had experienced with in international level. To me, it was the level of professional approach the coaching staff had towards the job. It was really interesting for me how the young people were knowledgeable and how they could put things together to make the team run as smooth as possible.
So are you saying that they were more professional than you would see like on the European side?
It was different. Attention to details to me was, that's something general in my opinion. If I compare European basketball to American basketball, whatever you have in the United States, is everything is pretty well documented here in the United States, and in a way that you can follow it up much easier. comparing to the experiences I had at the international level.
Okay, fair enough. So you spent a whole season there, and is it safe to say that the Vipers, who are connected to the Rockets, kind of run the same system?
Yes, exactly. We were running the same system.
Okay, so now was that how familiar were you with D'Antoni's style of offense, and I guess how they've adjusted it to have Chris Paul and Harden there? Was it exactly the same as they were doing in the Rockets, or were there different tweaks?
Well, it was pretty much the same. Definitely, the personnel was the difference, but the whole offensive ideas and options, they were pretty much the same. Yeah. But we had the freedom to just make some small tweaks or use some options more, or just according to our personnel. Yeah. Okay,
so it sounds like if we watched footage of the Vipers play, it was probably a little bit closer to the traditional D'Antoni offense versus the hyper ISO of what we saw like in the playoffs with the Rockets, right? Did you guys didn't ISO as much as they do there, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the ISO ball was more done in the playoffs. I mean, it was in the regular season as well. But yes, we were doing the 21 offense, delay offense, and all of those options more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, had you had experience with the 21 and coaching it before you got to the Vipers?
I was familiar with it. I visited Coach D'Antoni in his practices when he was in New York with Knicks, but I never ran it myself.
Okay. So how was it easier to teach, and how did they break it down? Was it the kind of thing where they would do it in a part method with like 2-3 line drills and show it, or they just do the whole thing and show it all 5-on-0?
It is a very easy to teach and easy to understand offense. And as you said, there were breakdown drills for 2 or 3 men, and also we were doing the 5-on-5 as well.
And then, so was there a progression, like they started off with 2-man, 3-man drills, and then they slowly built to 5-on-0 and 5-on-5?
Yes, there were.
Okay. Now, how about analytics? We know about Daryl Morey and how he's built a huge analytics team. How robust is it at the G League level for you guys?
Well, it was that was one of the things that when I got familiar with the system over there was really interesting for me to witness. There was a lot of interesting information shared with analytic people with us, and especially when we got to playoffs, we had a lot of different input from the analytics people. It was in the G League as well. As I'm not sure if it's as much as they have it with Rockets, but there was huge impact of analytics over there.
And then, and how much did that cross over into the actual coaching and adjustments and what you guys ran? I mean, were they trying to process that on the bench and really just in the games understand, what sets are working when with who and all that kind of thing?
Well, if you mean real time, the only thing we would do real time was our substitution patterns, which we were just following up during the course of the game. According to the personnel, as you most probably know, there is a lot of roster changes in G League, so we needed to just review our substitution patterns. So that was one of the things we were doing real time. Another thing was the coding of the game was also done real time. Apart from these two and just the standard box score, the other things we were doing after the game or before the game.
Okay, so and how much of that of the analytics influenced how you were training each individual player? I mean, were you guys so deep into the numbers that you could say, all right, this guy needs to work on his left wing threes from the pass comes from the corner, or that kind of thing? Was that how specific it was with the analytics?
Yes or no. Sometimes, yes, for some specific players, we would just refer to analytics and the numbers, and for some, we may just count on our individual assessments. But we would always check with numbers. It was not always from numbers to players. Sometimes we would go from players to, skills to numbers.
Sure. And then, in the G League, I mean, how important is it to win versus develop the players to potentially make an NBA roster?
That's a very good question. The first, I think, think that each person who is involved with the G League team is the development of players, and then comes winning. That's my understanding. So because of all the tight schedules, travels, and the roster changes, I think development, both with the staff and players, the staff are not excluded in this. The main focus is on development, and then I think the winning comes.
Sure. Now, so remind me, were there any players that got called up this year to play for the Rockets?
Yeah, we had some players who were there on assignment, so they would go back and forth from RGV Vipers to Rockets every now and then. Okay. And how did the Vipers do this year? We ended up we got eliminated from in the semifinals of the Western Conference. Okay. So is it the same structure playoff-wise as the NBA? No, it is different. It is single game elimination prior to finals. And in the finals, it's 3 games. Aha. Okay. And then what's the what are the crowds like? Do you get a lot of people coming to the games? It depends on where you play. In some cities, yes, there's a huge turnout. And as you may have heard, when we played in Toronto, there was about 18,000 plus. A record showed up over there in Toronto for our game. Oh, wow. Now, was that a playoff game or was this a regular season game? Regular season. Wow. Yeah. That's the same kind of crowd as an NBA gets. Yeah, that was a record for G League, as I said, yes. Great. Well, what's the overall thing? How did you feel about how you fit in with the season, and are you looking forward to another season with the Vipers? Definitely, I would like to just be a part of the G League team. Vipers, they're a very good organization, and also Rockets, for sure, they are a great organization. There was a lot of things that I personally learned during this seasons, both about G League and, of course, about basketball. And I look forward to in any other opportunity in the G League, yeah. Sure. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and giving us a little insight into what the G League is like from a coach's standpoint. And we'll have to check in with you later on and see how it's going. So thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it, Safa. Thank you very much for having me. And that was Safa Kamalian, who's the assistant coach for the RGV Vipers from this past year, and a good friend of mine. We talk a lot about basketball all the time in the background, and always nice to talk to him and get some more insights into the basketball coaching. So don't go anywhere, sports fans. We're going to be right back with the rest of our great show tonight and a lot of great guests after these words from our sponsor. I wanted to take a quick break to talk to you about Simple Contacts, a convenient way to reorder your contact lenses that will save you money. When my wife runs out of her contacts, it's normally a nightmare to renew her prescription, and sometimes she's forced to wear her old ones for days until she finds the time to go out and pick them up. With Simple Contacts, they bring the doctor to you. You can take a vision test at home in under 5 minutes, then a real doctor reviews your test and writes you a new prescription. This isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam, but it's the next best thing. Simple Contacts offers every brand of lenses, and their prices are unbeatable, and shipping is free. And you can also save $30 off your first Simple Contacts order with my code CoachNick. So to save $30 on those lenses, just go to simplecontacts.com/CoachNick or enter the code CoachNick at checkout. Again, it's simplecontacts.com/CoachNick or just enter my code CoachNick at checkout.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and we are back with another segment of the B-Ball Breakdown. As you know, we are always here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on the SB Nation Radio Network across the FM stations and anywhere streaming you might be. And today I'm really happy to bring on friend of the breakdown, Alex Kennedy, who is a HoopHype writer and host of the HoopHype podcast. They make it very easy for you to find all of his stuff. And we want to talk a little bit about Jerry Colangelo and about where LeBron's going. So, Alex, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Coach Nick, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, break it down. What have we missed? People might not have been paying attention to the Colangelo thing. What is the latest? What do you know about what happened in the whole craziness?
Well, he resigned, obviously, and it seems like either he was running the accounts or someone close to him. You know, he's mentioned his wife as a possibility, was running these accounts, and, there were a number of them, and basically the accounts not only criticized current and former Sixers, it also included, really secret information that the organization would not want leaking out to the public, medical records, information about trades or transactions, secrets within the organization, and then just some, gossipy type stuff as well. So the organization did not want those things getting out there, obviously. So whenever this, came to light and the burner accounts were linked to him or someone close to him, they launched the investigation, and then eventually I think he was going to be fired. So he decided to resign ahead of that. So basically they parted ways, and now the search begins for a new GM. Obviously they have, so many great pieces in place already. Sam Hinkie really set them up really well. They have the second most cap space this summer. They have tons of young players. A lot of executives are trying to get that job right now.
I can imagine, yes. They are on the upswing, about to be challenging the rest of the Eastern Conference for years. But I got a couple questions about the whole Colangelo thing I think they're interesting. So, first of all, is he throwing his wife under the bus? Do you believe that she was really controlling those, or do you think that it was him?
Well, I think he admitted to one of them. He said one of them was his. And there were two that, if you looked at the phone number, because you can look on Twitter and see what phone number is tied to an account. There were 5 accounts, and 3 of them were tied to one phone number. 2 of them were tied to another phone number. So I think he was running 2 of them, and one of the ones the one that he admitted to running was one of the 2 that had the same phone number. So I think 2 of them were his, and I think 3 of them were his wife. And there could have been more. We don't know. Those are the ones we found and that are, public right now.
Okay,
if he had
question.
5, who knows how many he had,
Right. Well, here's a follow-up. What we do know is as soon as they, called the Sixers for comment, they didn't let them know about all 5 accounts. Yet, within an hour, all 5 accounts were turned private for at least a little while. So the question there is what the implication there, if we want to believe his wife was involved, was that they found out, they talked to Colangelo, and then Colangelo calls his wife and says, "Hey, honey, do you have any accounts? Can you make them whatever?" Like, do you really think that that's what happened?
Well, that's the thing. It definitely kind of is the smoking gun for me that it was either Colangelo or someone in his family, because they get that call and immediately all the accounts go private. So the timing was very strange. You also had one of the accounts was live tweeting University of Chicago games, which is Brian Colangelo's son, where he plays. He's a college player, a college athlete. So there were a lot of things that linked him to the accounts. I think it'd be really hard to deny that this is just some random person that set him up. He maintains his innocence. He says that he had one account basically just to monitor the media and everything, and that account didn't really have anything outrageous on it. It was the other ones that, said things about Embiid and, we should run him into the ground. He's not the future of the franchise. Let's exploit him. Things like that. But once you have that tied to you, if players aren't going to want to be associated with you or your franchise. So it's going to be really hard for him now going forward trying to get another job too, because players are going to remember this kind of thing.
Sure. Well, let me ask you one more question then. Does he get fired if LeBron is not a free agent this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think the organization, it was just too much of a controversy and too much drama. And even if they weren't trying to clean up the image for free agency, you had current players that were upset. Joel Embiid went through and read a bunch of the tweets, and he actually liked 5 of them, including the one that said, he's not the future of the franchise. Let's exploit him. There was another one that said, if I were management, I would kick him in the balls or something along those lines. He liked that one. I mean, you're upsetting the face of the franchise. Markelle Fultz was also someone that was criticized, and his medical info was leaked a lot. So certainly I think you had to fire him because the current players would have been upset as well.
Sure. And I have to imagine the more of that answer could come out if, God forbid their marriage breaks up. But, if it really was the wife behind his back and if he loses his job and probably, doesn't get back in the NBA from that would cause some severe, trouble in any marriage, I'd imagine. I did the right thing. And my wife doesn't care about basketball, doesn't like basketball, and wouldn't want to hear any of my secrets I might have anyway if I did work for an NBA team. So
my wife does not want me talking about basketball. She's not going to tweet about it. She doesn't even want to hear about the basketball stuff. So we're in the same boat, buddy.
Yeah, right. That said, if anybody out there listening who's single, if you find someone who's a woman who's really into, or hey, if you find anybody that you fall in love with that's really into basketball as well, then don't let them go. I mean, that's really worth a lot. So that's a pretty smooth segue, I think, into the next segment, which would be what the heck LeBron is going to do. We have all sorts of rumors about them looking at schools in L.A. For his kids, which would probably indicate he wants to come to L.A. What is the latest that you have heard? What do you believe most about where LeBron might end up?
Well, I think, the stuff about his kid and the school, that I think that's, speculation and rumors. And keep in mind, he's going to be a high schooler, and there's, top high school players leave their family and go across the country and play all the time. With big programs like Oak Hill and IMG Academy, guys go and leave their family and play in different states. So it wouldn't be crazy if his son went and played in this school in Los Angeles and he went and signed in Houston, for example. So I think, trying to read the tea leaves around where his son is going to school, I don't think that necessarily is linked to his free agency. It could be, but I think that's an assumption we cannot make. If I'm looking at it from a basketball standpoint, I think Houston makes the most sense. There's a great article on ESPN breaking down how they could land him. There's a lot of cap moves they'd have to make, and they kind of have to jump through some hoops. But the easiest way would be for LeBron to actually opt into his contract for next year and then demand a trade to the Rockets, like Chris Paul did last year to land on the Rockets from the Clippers. And that would allow them to keep guys like Trevor Ariza, re-sign Clint Capella, and not have to gut the roster, which is what they'd have to do if they were to sign him as a free agent. So I think that is a very interesting move, and that would be something that Daryl Morey would obviously want to do. LeBron and Chris Paul are very close. CP3 is already recruiting him. That team could challenge the Warriors potentially in the Western Conference. We saw how close they were this year. I think that's the best basketball move. If he has, off-court things in mind and wants to further his business and his, TV production company and all that, maybe he does go to Los Angeles, especially if he can bring someone like Paul George with him, because then you're not just going to a team that has young pieces, you're going to a team that has another star next to you as well, a team with Lonzo Ball, LeBron James, Brandon Ingram, Paul George, Kyle Kuzma, Brook Lopez, Julius Randle. If they bring those guys back, whoever's going to be around them, that's an interesting team in a huge market where he already has a house. So I think those are two teams to look at. And then the other dark horse for me is Philly, which we mentioned, because they do have so much cap space. They could not only sign LeBron, they could potentially add other players around him too. So you have Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, LeBron, and then what role players can you get? Could they put together a trade with all their assets that they have for someone like Kawhi Leonard if he's available? That's another situation I think that could be very interesting for LeBron. So those are the three teams I'm kind of looking at as serious contenders for him.
Sure. I just feel like I don't know why he want to go to the West if his goal is to win another title. Obviously, the easiest path to the finals would probably be on his mind, and that would mean do not go to the West where you have to deal with either the Warriors or the Rockets or both if he goes to LA. I mean, sorry, he's not going to Warriors. So if he'll have to go deal with the Warriors and or the Rockets. So that would be my only thing. But then again, he is that good. And if you do throw a guy like Paul George in the same team with him, and I do recognize your point as far as having to play alongside Lonzo Ball, who's still a young player who's going to make a lot of rookie-ish mistakes, and Kuzma and Ingram. I could see that being a thing where he can't wait a year to let them develop. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. And then how does that tilt the rest of the free agency? I mean, who is the next biggest guy we have to worry about?
Paul George is really going to be the next guy that everyone's kind of looking at. I think, teams are obviously going to focus on LeBron James. And then once he makes his decision, Paul George is going to be, the guy that everyone looks at. Does he stay in Oklahoma City? Does he go to Los Angeles like a lot of people have predicted for quite some time now, just because of, his ties there? He's from there. Or does he go somewhere else that's unexpected? Does he sign with Philadelphia? He'd be really interesting on the Sixers because he can shoot the ball. He'd make them even better defensively. So Paul George is really the next guy to keep an eye on. But this is a really interesting free agent class. There's a lot of guys to look at, a lot of really interesting restricted free agents. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that there's only about 6 or 7 teams with really significant cap space. So that makes things very interesting. The market isn't wide open, and it's not like a ton of teams have money to spend. So that kind of limits some guys' options.
Well, Alex, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and breaking that down for us. And I think you're right, by the way. Paul George really ends up, I think, will be the deciding factor for a lot of the teams and where he goes and that's how everyone else falls in line. So interesting he's got that much kind of power. But you got that kind of power on Twitter and as you're writing on HoopHype, so make sure everyone goes over there and follow Alex Kennedy. And don't go anywhere, sports fans. We'll be right back on the B-Ball Breakdown.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
Sports fans, it's Coach Nick. We are back. A lively 2 segments in the can so far. We had a great little information from Alex Kennedy about LeBron, where he's going to go with free agency. And then we had Safa Kamalian come on and give us some insights into what it's like to be a assistant coach in the G League with the RGV Vipers. But that was all just a prelude to the main event, the big segment, with that guy, Dave DuFour, at Dave DuFour NBA, who's going to come on. We're going to talk about the NBA, talk about the finals. So, Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, as usual.
As usual, as always. The old standby. We haven't talked a little bit. We certainly haven't talked since the finals were over. Thoughts?
Well, I think the finals wound up being exactly what we both expected. The Warriors are, just overwhelming compared to most teams in the league. And the Cavs, any other year, they might actually be a championship team, but this year, they ran into the Warriors again, sort of like 2017. Of course, this 2018 Cavs, not nearly as potent as the 2017 Cavs, but, you got to give tip of the cap to the Cavs. They did keep it competitive in a few of those games. Really could have stolen game 1 in Oracle, minus a little bit of what do we say? Was J.R. Smith just lost in the moment? That's what I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
No.
But,
the facts. We have the facts. He thought that they were up. I don't think it's disputable, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I hate to harp on it because, obviously he wouldn't have, it's a tough situation. Anyway, so they could have stolen one there. And that probably would have just pushed the series to 5.
Right. Because
the Warriors are just that much better. And Kevin Durant had an incredible series, in particular Game 3. That's a signature moment for his career. And so, I have no beef with him being the Finals MVP. If it had gone to Steph Curry, I think that would have been fine too.
Right.
But I do think that Kevin Durant sort of had the signature moment of that series in that Game 3. To me, it was a fun series. I like, outside of Game 3, I thought it was competitive, and I think Ty Lue did a good job with the hand he had, keeping him in these games.
It's funny because you're right. They were a couple plays away from being up 2-1. But yet, even in those games and in game 2, their defense was still so bad that it's hard to imagine that this team would be capable of beating anybody else in the finals as well. Yet you're right. The argument is they were. Now, would they have probably gotten beaten by the Rockets as well? Yeah, probably the same kind of way, I'd imagine. But other than that, they probably win or go deep into a finals. So it's really kind of crazy. Maybe what we're learning is this whole defense thing. Maybe it's not as important as we're thinking it is.
I'm going to disagree on that. I think that if the Cavs had a better defense, maybe they could have won some of these games that were closer. Like maybe that is the difference between, getting swept and having a series of 2-2.
Right,
and
without question.
As we've talked about throughout the season, you build your habits during the regular season. So it's tough to sort of flip that switch, especially defensively, when it's time for the playoffs. And we saw that, the Cavs, the teams that they faced where it made it appear as if their defense had been fixed. They weren't playing offensive juggernauts outside of the Raptors, who for some reason just wilt at the sight of LeBron. They were playing the Celtics, which was like, the number 18 offense or something. And the Pacers offense wasn't much better. So, it was a little bit of fool's gold there for the folks that thought that they had sort of flipped the switch.
Fair enough. Now, let's burn it all down. I'm ready to burn it down right now because I want to talk a little bit about the LeBron injury. I got to be honest. I lost some respect for him for self-inflicting a wound that ultimately, especially in the Game 3 that was so close, and who knows how much it affected him. It clearly did affect him. I lost respect for him to have done that to himself.
I think that if you're gonna give Enes Kanter a hard time for breaking his hand, I think if you're gonna give who was it that punched Amare?
Yeah,
Stoudemire.
Yeah, I did.
You're gonna give those. We gotta hold him to the same standard, if not a higher standard. We all know LeBron James is better than that. I don't want to be I'm not trying to pass judgment on his character. We all kind of lose our temper, but we don't expect that from LeBron. And I think that if we're going to criticize any other player, he should be open to the same criticism. It is pretty amazing though that he was able to still perform fairly well. His jumper definitely he struggled with that quite a bit. Didn't look comfortable, especially in that game too. So but still, I wouldn't have told you that his hand was broken. It's incredible. So I think he deserves the criticism. He definitely. Maybe they win Game 3 if his hand's not broken.
Right.
I think if you're going to criticize any of those lesser players, for sure LeBron deserves his criticism as well.
Yeah, and I know I roasted Amari when he put his fist through the glass of I think it was a fire extinguisher thing. But, this is different. It's the finals, and it was almost like, they were so close that, okay, we can get them. Like Game 2, we could be right there then. Like we can do the same kind of thing. It was like instead, he's kind of like taking himself out of the series. Now, maybe that was also part of it where he sort of just felt like, you know what, it doesn't matter what I'm going to do. We're not going to be able to beat this team, which is what everyone was saying, and it was clear. But, man, you got to go in firing on all cylinders here. And, this wasn't a freak injury or whatever. This was a self-inflicted, and it was really, troubling to me on a couple of levels. So, I don't know. That was my take on the finals. But, yeah, it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. And anything, okay, aside from LeBron free agency, and maybe even is there anything below LeBron and Paul George that interests you as far as where free agents might go?
Danny Green is extremely interesting to me. And I know that, I shouldn't be the only one, but I may be. With a guy who can defend the way he can, and when he's healthy, the way he shoots threes, and then we even saw a little bit of additional creation off the dribble. He could be a guy. If the Sixers don't bring JJ Redick back, he could be a guy that could slot right into that Redick spot and make what is already a really good defense even better. And so, I look at Danny Green as a guy that a lot of teams are gonna flirt with, and whether he's wanting to leave San Antonio or not, that remains to be seen. And of course, San Antonio they're not going to be asleep at the wheel this summer. They're going to be looking to make moves and stuff like that. But and it's not just because Danny Green is one of my favorite players, but I think that he's a useful player for teams that aspire to championships, and Philadelphia being one of them. I really think he should be their top target. Another guy is Marcus Smart. He's going to be a restricted free agent. He proved himself to be the sort of player that, his positive plus minus, despite his terrible shooting, is an indicator of what he brings to the table. He's He's an effort guy. He's a great defender, can defend 1 through 4, and even get switched onto 5s in the post and hold his own despite, often giving up 6 to 8 inches. So, I think Marcus Smart is a guy. It's going to be interesting to see whether the market values him as much as the Celtics will, and how much the Celtics actually value him, and how much they want to bring him back, because they don't exactly have the easiest cap sheet to work with either. They've got some stuff there, but they have his bird rights. So, will they match up to $14 million? I don't know. Will he be offered more than 12? I have no idea. And the market this summer is kind of tight, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Marcus Smart. That's one to keep your eye on.
Sure. I mean, they have the other guys under rookie contracts with the big three of Brown, Tatum, and Rozier, so that should help them in some degree with having some extra cash. What?
I love that Rozier is in there as the big three.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he proved himself as almost a starter in the league, right?
Yeah, I think he he would probably start for a handful of teams.
Yeah, so,
Sure.
I mean, certainly it's a guy I would think they'd want to really keep. But let me ask about Danny Green for a second, because, this guy was an elite three-point shooter for several years in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4 years in a row. And then all of a sudden, the last 3 years, it's been a real drop-off, to average-ish. And like last year was a drop-down even from that. So do you think he was simply a product of, like, really good teams with supreme ball movement that were getting him wide-open shots, or is it a mechanical thing? What do you think ultimately affected this prolonged? I can't say it's a slump, but it's a prolonged dip in what you would expect.
Yeah. So the dip coincides with LaMarcus Aldridge arriving into town, and with the Spurs focusing more on the mid range. So obviously the ball movement isn't there. He's taking more contested threes. They're not as open as they used to be, and nobody shoots better on contested threes than they do on open threes. I don't think there's a single guy in the league that does. So to me, it makes sense that he would see a dip in his three-point percentage. And if you put him into a more egalitarian system where there is more ball movement than the current Spurs, and I want to say he shoots better in lineups without LaMarcus Aldridge. So, and don't quote me on that because I may be incorrect, but I feel like I read that. But that's a very Trumpian answer there. But I do believe that when you see him in lineups with more ball movement, he does shoot the ball better.
Well, if only we could look that up as I'm trying to type this on NBA Wowie right now, and I hit submit. Danny Green, shooting wise, his 3-point percentage with LaMarcus Aldridge on the bench. You want to know? You want to guess what it is?
41%.
If I am to believe this, he shot 32% from 3 with LaMarcus Aldridge on the bench. So I don't know.
So
something's weird.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
It's really bad. Yeah, it's like bad. So, but again, and I'm pretty sure, this is all just numbers that, NBA Wowie's going to scrape. So I'm pretty sure that's right, and I did it right. So, interesting. And perhaps maybe it's a change of scenery. I really like Danny Green in Philly. I think that would be a really nice fit for him. Does that mean Covington is still there?
Yeah. I would say it depends on what they want to do with Redick. If they don't want to bring Redick back and they brought in Danny Green, I think he would slide right into that spot.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, no, I really like that. And we'll have to see what they do as far as any other free agents they want to try and bring in. I just would hate to see LeBron sort of stifle all that, even for an exchange for, a few extra wins or whatever they might do, right? It just doesn't seem like it'd be worth it.
Yeah, I think that it would sort of take away from Ben Simmons and what he's going to be as a player, Yeah. I don't see a path to playing the two of them together. It's not that they couldn't do it and be successful, but I think that you limit Simmons' ceiling quite a bit by having him play with LeBron, taking the ball out of his hands. But there is also an argument to be made that you might turn him into a very lethal cutter playing off the ball from LeBron. And, maybe it would force him into developing a jump shot in game. And, so there's look, any team that adds LeBron is instantly going to be better. And any team in the East that adds LeBron is instantly going to be a title contender, or at least a finals contender.
Right.
So, I threw out that LeBron should go to Utah. And I had a lot of Utah fans saying no. And I just, I just want to call bull on that, because you add LeBron to Utah and you're instantly the second best team in the league.
Okay. Interesting. Maybe.
Yeah. He's that good.
He vaults above the Rockets? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. It's close.
They'd have you'd be adding the best player in the league to the best defense in the league.
Wow. Well, listen, that's a nice bomb to drop at the end of the segment, and we can all ruminate that in our minds for a little while for the next time. So, Dave, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we will catch up to you next week.
Sounds good.
And don't go anywhere, sports fans. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
So there you have it, sports fans. Another show is in the books, episode 17, believe it or not. And it's been great to be with you here on the radio, on streaming, and everywhere else on the podcast. And I cannot wait to begin this summer, where we're going to get into a lot of detail about the draft, and we're going to give you some really great insights going forward about these players you might not know too much about, but who will be coming to you live in HD on your screen come November, or excuse me, it's October these days. And I want you to get a little bit of a head start on who they are and how they're going to fit. So stay tuned for lots of draft content on the bballbreakdown.com, and certainly on our YouTube channel and on Twitter and on the podcast, all sorts of stuff. We got a lot of great guests who are going to come on and lend their expertise to the whole endeavor. And then we have the free agency period, where who's going to go where. We got LeBron, we got Paul George, we have Danny Green, like Dave was talking about, and a whole host of other players that are going to shift the balance of power one way or the other. It'll be interesting to see. So do not go anywhere. At least don't go anywhere away from B-Ball Breakdown, because we are going to be almost as busy as we are during the year. And it was such an amazing run through the finals. We've never had so much traffic come and watch our videos and comment and on Twitter as well. We're going to keep that going. It was too much fun to let that go and not keep the content flowing through the pipeline. So really interesting stuff. I hope you got some insight into what it was like to be an assistant coach, a little bit for the RGV Vipers, and maybe we'll do some more G League stuff, because I really like to get into in there. I feel like most people don't know what it's like there, what the crowds are like, what the play is like, who the players are. So we're going to have to work on getting some more content there. So let me know over on Twitter if you like that segment, if you want to hear more about the G League. And anything else you want to see. I'm always available on Twitter. I respond to, I think, almost every or all mentions that come in. I love Twitter. I love being able to have that conversation there, as well as here, as well as YouTube. So don't forget that. And I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about LeBron James breaking his hand? I'm kind of curious what that does to his legacy. Does it make it better because the people are even more in awe of what he did with a broken hand, which kind of adds to that narrative. So I don't know. I feel like a series that had a couple games that went down to the wire. At least the one game 3, you put yourself in behind the 8 ball like that. It's not good. Not a good look. And don't forget, kids, it's a good lesson for you guys to be able to have enough control, even though it might be as frustrating as all frustrating. You have to be able to control yourself to not smash your hand into a board and break it. So either way, I'm not going to smash my hand into anything in the near time future, because I'm having such a great time. Don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?